You don't begin with answers. You begin with unease. The air feels heavy before you even open your eyes, thick with smoke, damp stone, and something sour that clings to your throat. When you step outside, the city greets you not with order, but with noise and closeness. Narrow streets twist between leaning buildings, their upper floors almost touching, blocking the sky. Animals roam freely, pigs rooting through refuse, dogs snapping at scraps, and waste runs in shallow gutters along the road. People move shoulder to shoulder, merchants shouting, carts grinding over uneven stone, children weaving between adults who have no space to breathe, let alone think. It feels like life as it has always been. Familiar, crowded, alive. At first, nothing seems unusual. The rhythm of the city continues. Bread is baked, bells ring, voices rise and fall in markets. But then something shifts, subtle, almost invisible. A man stumbles. At first, no one notices. Then he collapses, his body hitting the stone with a sound that cuts through the noise. People gather, but they keep a distance, unsure. His face is pale, his breathing shallow, his body trembling in a way that feels wrong. Someone whispers that he is sick. Another says he was fine just yesterday. You watch as he is carried away and the crowd closes again as if nothing happened. But something has changed. The next day there are more, not many. Just enough to make people uneasy. A woman with fever, a child too weak to stand. Then the marks begin to appear. Dark swellings under the skin, hidden at first beneath clothing, then impossible to ignore. They grow quickly, painful, unnatural. People touch them with fear, as if pressing on something that should not exist. The illness spreads with a speed that feels unnatural, as though it is moving ahead of understanding. Within days, entire households fall silent. Doors remain closed, windows dark, no voices inside. No one knows what they are facing. There is no name for it yet, no explanation that fits what people are seeing. Physicians step forward with confidence, but their knowledge cannot keep pace. They speak of poisoned air, of invisible vapors rising from the earth, of imbalance within the body. They recommend herbs, smoke, prayers disguised as remedies. Priests offer a different certainty. They speak of judgment, of sins unpunished, of a force beyond human control now demanding attention. Their words spread quickly, filling the gaps left by ignorance, and the people, trapped between fear and belief, begin to listen to anything that offers meaning. Panic does not arrive all at once. It builds, slowly at first, then all at once. You see it in the way people avoid one another, in the sudden silence when someone coughs, in the hurried steps of those trying to leave the city before it is too late. But there is no escaping something no one understands. Trade continues. Ships arrive at the ports as they always have, carrying goods, wealth, and now something else. From a distance, nothing seems wrong, but when the ships dock, the truth reveals itself in fragments. The crews are quiet, too quiet. Some lie motionless on the decks, others move slowly, weakly, their bodies already losing the fight. The cargo is untouched, but it is not alone. Rats move freely between crates, slipping into shadows, unnoticed by most. They have always been there, part of the background of life. But now they carry something unseen, something that does not announce itself, until it is too late. Fleas invisible to the eye pass from animal to human, from one body to the next, creating a chain no one can see and no one can break. The city begins to change, not suddenly, but undeniably. The noise fades. Streets that once overflowed with life grow quieter each day. Shops close, markets shrink. The smell in the air shifts from smoke and food to something heavier, something harder to ignore. Death becomes part of the landscape, not as a distant event, but as a constant presence. And still no one understands why. The disease moves faster than explanation, faster than belief, faster than any attempt to contain it. You stand in the middle of it, watching as logic gives way to fear. People search for causes they can grasp, for enemies they can see, for reasons that make sense of the chaos. But the truth remains hidden, buried beneath assumptions and limits they cannot overcome. And as the city falls into a silence that was never meant to exist. One question begins to rise above all others, quiet but persistent, waiting to be answered. But what if the plague didn't begin here at all? If you want to uncover what really started this chain of death and follow the path back to its true origin, stay with this story until the end. The story pulls you away from the narrow streets and silent houses, lifting you far beyond the city that once felt like the center of everything. You begin to see a wider world, one that does not move slowly or randomly, but along invisible lines that connect distant lands. Trade routes stretch across continents, linking people who will never meet, carrying goods, ideas, and something far more dangerous. You are no longer standing in a single place. You are moving across Central Asia, where the journey truly begins, long before anyone in Europe senses what is coming. You follow caravans traveling across dry landscapes and open plains, loaded with silk, spices, metals, and fabrics. Merchants move in groups, crossing vast distances with patience and routine. Camels carry heavy loads, footsteps pressing into dust that has seen centuries of movement. These routes are not new. They are the arteries of the known world, connecting civilizations in ways that feel powerful and essential. But hidden within this system, something has already begun to travel. It does not move like the caravans. It does not need roads, maps, or direction. It moves silently, carried by small bodies that no one pays attention to. Rodents, living alongside humans as they always have, begin to carry something within them. A bacterium, unknown and invisible, takes hold. Fleas feed on these animals, and in doing so, they become part of a chain that no one can see. When the host weakens or dies, the flea does not disappear. It searches for another body, another source of blood, another link in the chain. You begin to understand that the spread is not random. It follows movement, it follows connection, it follows the very systems that make life possible across continents. From one caravan to another, from one resting point to the next, the infection moves without being noticed. No one stops it, because no one knows it exists. Trade continues as it always has, efficient, constant, unstoppable. As you move westward, the routes begin to converge. What starts in distant regions slowly approaches the Middle East, where trade intensifies and populations grow denser. Markets expand, ports become busier, and the flow of goods accelerates. Here the chain strengthens. More people, more movement, more opportunity for something unseen to pass from one place to another. Still, nothing appears unusual. The system works exactly as it was designed to work. Then the journey reaches the sea. Ports become the next stage of transmission. Ships built to carry wealth across water now carry something else entirely. They are loaded with goods from distant lands, sealed in crates and barrels, but they are not isolated. Rats move through the cargo, feeding, nesting, traveling without restriction. Fleas remain attached, waiting, transferring silently from animal to animal, and eventually to humans. The voyage across the sea does not stop the chain. It extends it. You follow one of these ships as it crosses into the Mediterranean. From the outside, it looks like any other vessel returning from trade. But as it approaches the harbor, something feels wrong. There is no movement on deck, no voices calling out. When it docks, the truth reveals itself in fragments. Some of the crew are already dead. Others are too weak to stand. Their bodies show signs no one fully understands. Fever, weakness, dark swellings that signal something far more serious than exhaustion. And yet, the cargo is still unloaded. The system does not pause. Trade does not stop. The goods are moved into the city, carried by workers who have no reason to suspect danger. The rats follow, the fleas follow, and with them, the infection enters a new environment, one where it can spread faster than ever before. Cities like Sicily and southern Italy become the first points of entry, not because they are vulnerable by design, but because they are connected, because they are open. You watch as the pattern repeats, from port to port, from ship to street, from one city to the next. The infection does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, carried by normal activity, hidden within routine. And when it finally becomes visible, it is already too late to trace its origin. But the people living through this do not see what you see. They cannot observe bacteria. They cannot understand transmission. They interpret the world through what is visible and what they believe. When sickness appears, they search for meaning within their understanding. Some say it is punishment from God, a response to human wrongdoing. Others claim that wells have been poisoned, that enemies have spread something deliberately. Some speak of cursed winds, of air, itself becoming dangerous. Each explanation spreads quickly, filling the absence of real knowledge. The truth remains completely invisible to them. As more cities become connected through trade, the spread accelerates. What once moved slowly across land now moves rapidly through networks of exchange. Routes that once represented prosperity now act as pathways for destruction. There are no systems in place to stop it, no quarantines, no understanding of isolation, no way to break the chain, because the chain itself cannot be seen. You begin to realize something unsettling. The same system that connects the world, that allows civilizations to grow and thrive, is now enabling something deadly to move without resistance. Every port, every road, every exchange becomes part of a larger pattern. And that pattern is spreading faster than anyone alive at the time can comprehend. By now, you understand how it happened. You can trace the path from distant lands to crowded cities, from rodents to fleas, from ships to streets. The logic becomes clear when you step back and observe it as a whole, but the people living inside it remain trapped in confusion, reacting to effects without ever seeing the cause. And as the chain continues to expand, linking more places, more lives, and more deaths, a deeper realization begins to form. This was never just about a disease. If you want to see how this invisible chain turned into a global catastrophe and why the system itself made it unstoppable, stay with this story until the end. The question begins to shift. You are no longer asking what caused the plague. That answer, at least in part, is already taking shape. Instead, something deeper starts to emerge, something far more unsettling. Why did it spread so uncontrollably? Why did it move through entire populations as if nothing stood in its way? As you step back and look more closely, the answer is no longer hidden in a single moment, but in the structure of the world itself. You return to the cities, but now you see them differently. What once felt alive now feels fragile. Streets are not just narrow, they are crowded beyond what they can sustain. People live packed together in small spaces, entire families sharing rooms with little light and less air. Waste is not removed. It remains thrown into the streets, left to decay in the open. Water mixes with filth, creating a constant layer of contamination that no one questions because it has always been this way. Animals move freely between humans, sharing the same space, the same environment, the same risks. The conditions are not unusual, they are normal, and that is exactly what makes them dangerous. You begin to understand that the city itself is not just a place where the disease appears, it is a place where it thrives. Every surface, every interaction, every moment of contact becomes part of a larger system that allows something invisible to spread without resistance. There is no separation, no protection, no concept of hygiene as you would understand it today. Life continues as it always has, even as the danger grows within it. Then you see the role of movement. Trade does not stop, even as fear begins to rise. Goods continue to flow between cities, carried by merchants who depend on this system to survive. Ports remain open, welcoming ships from distant regions without hesitation. These places, designed to connect the world, now serve as gateways for something far more destructive. People move constantly, unaware that they are carrying more than what they can see. There is no understanding of contamination, no reason to suspect that everyday contact could be the cause of something so devastating. The more connected the world becomes, the faster the spread accelerates. And yet the most critical factor remains unseen, not because it is hidden, but because it has never been discovered. There is no concept of bacteria, no awareness of microscopic life, no understanding of transmission from one body to another through invisible agents. Without this knowledge, every explanation is built on assumption. People rely on what they can observe, what they can believe, what fits within their understanding of the world. When that understanding fails, they turn to something else. Superstition fills the gap. You begin to see how fear transforms into reaction. Panic spreads alongside the disease, feeding on uncertainty. People look for someone to blame, for something they can point to and say, "This is the cause." Accusations rise quickly. Neighbors become suspects. Outsiders become targets. Violence erupts not from knowledge but from desperation. Entire communities fracture under the weight of fear, turning against themselves in ways that only deepen the chaos. At the same time, something even more disturbing begins to happen. People start to abandon the sick, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. Families leave behind those who show signs of illness, hoping to protect themselves. Doors are closed not just to keep danger out, but to keep suffering contained. The bonds that once held communities together begin to break, replaced by instinct and fear. What was once a shared life becomes a series of isolated decisions. The scenes grow darker. You move through villages where no voices remain. Houses stand open, untouched, as if time itself has stopped. In the streets, bodies lie where they fell, left unburied because there are no hands left to carry them. The smell lingers, heavy and inescapable. In larger cities, the same pattern repeats, but on a scale that feels overwhelming. Death is no longer an event, it is a constant presence. Physicians, once seen as figures of knowledge, now stand powerless. Their methods fail. Their explanations no longer convince. They try to help, but they do not understand what they are facing. And without understanding, there is no control. This is when the realization becomes impossible to ignore. The plague did not simply arrive and take over. It was not an isolated event, disconnected from the world around it. It was enabled, quietly, consistently, by the way society functioned, by the way cities were built, by the way people lived, by the way systems connected distant places without understanding the risks they carried. The cause was not only biological, it was systemic. Everything that made the world work, the trade, the density, the movement, the beliefs, also made it vulnerable. And once the chain began, there was nothing within that system capable of stopping it. No barriers, no knowledge, no time. By now, the disease is no longer spreading, it is overwhelming. It moves faster than fear, faster than reaction, faster than any attempt to contain it. And as it does, society itself begins to collapse under the weight of what it cannot control. Order fades, trust disappears, survival replaces structure. You stand in the middle of a world that is no longer functioning the way it was meant to, and the most unsettling truth begins to take shape, not in what happened, but in what was always there, hidden in plain sight. But what made this system so blind to its own danger? If you want to understand how this blindness shaped one of the deadliest events in human history and what it reveals about the world even today, stay with this story until the end. The perspective shifts once more, but this time it does not simply move across distance. It moves across time. You are no longer standing entirely in the past, yet you have not fully returned to the present. Instead, you exist somewhere in between, where the echoes of what happened still linger, and the meaning of it all begins to take shape with unsettling clarity. The streets you walked before, the silence you witnessed, the fear that replaced logic, all of it begins to reorganize into something deeper than a sequence of events. You begin to understand that the plague was never just a disease moving from body to body. It was something larger, something embedded in the way the world functioned. The bacteria may have been the trigger, but it was not the full explanation. The real cause was a system that could not see itself, a network of connections so complex and so essential that no one within it could step back far enough to understand the risks it carried. Humans were connected in ways that felt powerful, even necessary. Trade allowed distant regions to exchange goods, ideas, and culture. Cities became centers of opportunity, where people gathered to build lives and communities. Movement created growth, and growth created progress. But within that progress, something critical was missing. There was no awareness of how these connections could also carry danger. No understanding that what linked people together could also expose them to something they could not detect. Trade created prosperity, but it also created vulnerability. Every route that carried wealth also carried risk. Every port that welcomed ships also opened the door to something unseen. Cities grew rapidly, expanding without the structure needed to protect the people inside them. Density increased, but systems of protection did not evolve at the same pace. The result was not just exposure, but amplification. Once the chain began, the system itself helped it spread. Now, as you stand between past and present, the parallels begin to emerge. You shift your view toward the modern world, toward the United States and beyond, where the scale is different, but the structure feels familiar. Globalization has replaced the old trade routes with something faster, more efficient, and far more expansive. Air travel connects continents in hours instead of months. Cities have grown into vast urban centers, filled with millions of people living in close proximity. The world is more connected than it has ever been, and yet the same underlying truth remains. Invisible threats still exist. You begin to question what would happen if something similar began today. Not in the exact same form, but in a way that follows the same logic. Would it be recognized quickly enough? Would systems respond in time? Or would the same patterns repeat, hidden within the complexity of modern life? The difference now is knowledge. Science has advanced. We understand bacteria, transmission, and prevention in ways that medieval societies could not. But knowledge alone does not eliminate vulnerability, because the system is still there. It is larger now, more advanced, more efficient, but still interconnected in ways that make it difficult to fully control. Movement has increased, speed has increased. The ability for something to spread has not disappeared, it has evolved. And while awareness has grown, the challenge remains the same, recognizing a threat before it becomes unstoppable. This is where the story becomes more than history. It becomes a reflection. You are no longer just observing what happened in 1348. You are seeing a pattern, one that stretches across time, one that reveals how systems can create both strength and weakness at the same time. The plague was not just a moment of crisis. It was a demonstration of what happens when a system operates without fully understanding itself. The silence you felt in those empty streets now takes on a different meaning. It is no longer just the absence of life, but the consequence of something that could not be seen until it was too late. And as you step further into the present, that silence transforms into a question, one that does not belong only to the past. Have we truly learned enough to prevent it from happening again? The answer is not simple. It exists somewhere between progress and uncertainty, between what we know and what we might still overlook. And that is what makes the story endure, not as a closed chapter, but as an ongoing warning. The Black Death was not just a tragedy of the past. It was a warning humanity still hasn't fully understood. If this story changed the way you see history and the world we live in today, stay with us, subscribe, and continue exploring the moments that shaped everything we are now.